Once upon a time, in a kingdom shimmering with sunlight, lived a beautiful and kind-hearted princess. She was betrothed to a handsome prince in a faraway land, a marriage that promised a future of happiness and love. As the day of her departure arrived, her mother, the old queen, prepared her for the long journey. She packed chests filled with glittering jewels, shimmering gold, and gowns spun from moonlight and silk. But the most precious gift was a small, enchanted handkerchief, a magical token of a mother's love, meant to protect the princess from all harm. With a final, tearful kiss, the princess said goodbye to her mother and her home, setting off with her loyal maid-in-waiting. Their journey began under a clear blue sky, the path winding through lush forests and rolling hills. The princess, full of hope, dreamed of her new life. But as the days passed, a dark shadow began to creep into the heart of her maid. The maid watched the princess, her beauty radiant even on the dusty road, and saw the chests of treasure that followed her. A bitter seed of jealousy took root, growing with every mile they traveled. The maid's heart, once loyal, turned to stone. She no longer saw a mistress to serve, but a rival to depose. On the third day, as the sun beat down upon them, the maid's jealousy finally boiled over. "I am tired of serving you," she spat, her voice laced with cruelty. "From now on, you will be the servant, and I will be the princess." The real princess, shocked and frightened by this sudden betrayal, refused. But she was alone, far from anyone who could help her. The maid, her face twisted with malice, threatened her, forcing the terrified princess to swap her fine royal gown for the maid's rough servant's dress. To complete her wicked plan, the maid snatched the magic handkerchief. "If you ever breathe a word of this to anyone," she hissed, "I will ensure you never breathe again." The princess, now a prisoner in her own life, had no choice but to obey. When they finally arrived at the prince's magnificent palace, the gates swung open to reveal a grand welcome. The false princess, adorned in the stolen gown and clutching the magic handkerchief, stepped forward with a proud, deceitful smile. She presented herself as the royal bride, fooling everyone, including the prince, who had been eagerly awaiting his true love. The real princess, cloaked in rags and anonymity, was cast aside. With no one to recognize her, she was assigned the lowliest of jobs, to be a goose girl, tending the royal flock in the fields alongside a simple old man named Conrad. Her new life had begun, not in a palace, but in a dusty yard filled with geese. Each morning, as the sun painted the sky with hues of pink and gold, the princess would lead her flock of geese out to the green meadows. Her heart ached with a sorrow so deep, it felt like a physical weight. She missed her home, the familiar comfort of her castle, and most of all, the loving embrace of her mother. One day, sitting by a babbling brook, she couldn't hold back her tears any longer. They streamed down her face, each one a tiny messenger of her grief. As a gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the weeping willow above her, she whispered her pain into the wind. "Oh, dear wind, blow my sorrow away. Carry it across the mountains and valleys, and let it find my mother's heart." The princess possessed a magnificent head of hair, so golden it seemed to have captured the sun itself. Every day, as she tended the geese, she would sit and comb her long, radiant locks. Old Conrad, the goosekeeper, would watch, mesmerized by the sight. The shimmering gold was so tempting that one day he couldn't resist trying to pluck a single strand for himself. But as he reached out, the princess, who still held a whisper of magic in her heart, would softly chant, "Blow, wind, blow, take Conrad's hat away. Let him chase it here and there while I sit and comb my hair." And just like that, a sudden gust of wind would snatch the hat from Conrad's head, sending it tumbling across the meadow. While he grumbled and ran after it, the princess could finish her grooming in peace. This strange ritual happened every single day, leaving poor Conrad bewildered and hatless. Finally, after losing his hat one too many times, Conrad grew suspicious of the mysterious Goose Girl. He marched to the palace and demanded to see the king. "Your Majesty," he began, "there's something very strange about the new Goose Girl. Every day she talks to the wind, and her hair shines like pure gold. And whenever I get near her, the wind steals my hat." The old king, a wise and observant ruler, was intrigued by this peculiar story. He decided he needed to see this for himself. The next day, he hid behind a thicket of bushes near the meadow and watched the Goose Girl. He saw not a simple servant, but a maiden of noble bearing. Her every movement filled with a quiet grace, her eyes clouded with a profound sadness. He knew at once that she was more than she seemed. That evening, the king summoned the Goose Girl to the palace. He led her into a private chamber, away from prying eyes and listening ears. "Tell me your story, my child," he said, his voice gentle and kind. "Do not be afraid. No harm will come to you here." But the princess was paralyzed with fear. The wicked maid's threat echoed in her mind, a cold promise of death if she spoke the truth. Seeing her terror, the wise king thought of another way. He pointed to the large, old-fashioned iron stove that stood in the corner of the room. "If you cannot tell me," he said softly, "then tell your troubles to the old iron stove. It has no ears to gossip and no tongue to betray you." The princess looked at the cold, silent stove. It seemed safe. Taking a deep breath, she knelt before it and began to whisper her story. She told of her loving mother, the magic handkerchief, and the long journey. Her voice trembling, she confessed the maid's cruel betrayal, the stolen clothes, and the terrible threat that had sealed her lips. She poured out all the pain and loneliness she had endured as a goose girl, her words a quiet stream of sorrow directed at the inanimate object. But what she didn't know was that the king had slipped behind the stove, listening to every single word. The truth, finally spoken, now rested in the hands of the one man who could set things right. As soon as the princess finished her tale, the king emerged from his hiding place. His face was a mask of grim determination. He immediately called for the false princess to be brought before him. Without revealing what he knew, he posed a question to the deceitful maid. "Tell me," he said, his voice ringing with authority, What punishment is fitting for a servant who has betrayed her mistress in the most wicked of ways? The false princess, arrogant and completely unaware that her web of lies had unraveled, laughed cruelly. "Such a traitor deserves no mercy," she declared. "She should be put in a barrel lined with sharp nails and dragged by 2 white horses through the streets until she is no more." The king's eyes narrowed. "You have judged yourself," he replied, his voice cold as steel. And so the wicked maid was punished exactly as she had decreed. The true princess was then brought forward. Her ragged servant's clothes replaced with magnificent royal gowns befitting her station. Her natural beauty, no longer hidden by sorrow and grime, shone brighter than any jewel in the kingdom. When the prince saw her, he was captivated. He saw the kindness in her eyes and the nobility in her spirit, and he knew he had found his true bride. Their wedding was a spectacular celebration, filled with music, feasting, and joy that spread throughout the entire land. The Goose Girl, who had endured so much hardship with grace and courage, finally took her rightful place. And from that day forward, she reigned alongside her prince, not just as a princess, but as a wise and beloved queen, cherished by all her people. Thank you so much for joining me for this classic fairy tale. I hope you enjoyed the story of the true princess who never lost her inner nobility. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more enchanting stories. We love sharing these timeless tales with you. See you in the next video.